Good morning, Bill.
Morning, Mark. How are you today?
Good, and a happy birthday, Bill.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Yes, I've just hidden my phone because the damn thing's been pinging all morning.
And as it should, because it's not every day you reach 80, is it?
Am I 80?
You're 80. You've told me that.
But don't you? You know I'm in denial. So, anyway, what a great day it is outside, looking out the window. And a couple of things on this week. Of course, we spoke about judging the business awards,
which was interesting.
You went to a Business in Heels function yesterday,
yes,
I believe.
On diversity, which was actually really interesting. It was very good.
Tomorrow I'm going to lunch in Melbourne for the Wallabies and the Lions, so the British Lions. So I guess I'm catching a train because there's no way I'll be able to drive home.
So today's podcast, Bill, is with Andrew Jones and Gian Jones. And Andrew, I've been nagging for a while to do this. So welcome, Andrew.
Thank you.
Welcome, Gian.
Thank you.
And we'll get into what Andrew does a little bit later, but let's kick off. So, Andrew, where was primary school?
So primary school for me was over in the UK. I started out in All Saints Primary, and then...
Which city?
Which city? Well, town, small market town back in those days, but it's called Bishop Stortford, just outside London, near Stansted Airport. So that's how most people navigate.
I think I've got Rellos living there. We'll talk about that later.
Right, well, there you go.
Small world.
Small world indeed. And it was there that I... was diagnosed as being dyslexic. So I actually changed schools for my final year of primary school. I changed schools to St Michael's Primary, where the head teacher, wonderful head teacher, Chris Fitton, she really helped me, read, write, count, all of the things that I was really struggling with. And from there, I then went to St Mary's Catholic school, still in Bishop Stortford, so just up the hill, and started in special needs maths and special needs English, and I decided, and this is probably where my achiever really came out, I decided that this dyslexia thing wasn't going to hold me back.
Very good.
And people were telling me, so the reason why I switched primary schools was, we were the guinea pig era of this new government form of testing and SATs, and the school was saying, well, let's not put you in because, it'll affect our scores. And I was like, how dare you, at a young age. And so the similar pattern kept coming through. And I'd been told by teachers early on that I've got a knack for problem solving and building things, and so that sparked my interest in design and engineering, and that's sort of what I wanted to do. And I had a dabble of exploring that I might want to be a teacher, and I did 2 weeks of teacher training, and they put me in with preps, and I'm 6'3", and little preps grabbing around your ankles, that
Not
put
good.
me off teaching for life.
So where was your sort of high school schooling? Comprehensive, I think, in the UK system. Where?
Yep. So that was at St Mary's Catholic school,
and then
in Bishop Stortford.
And then from there, did you uni or college?
Well, I decided there that I wanted to be a design engineer, and they said, well, you're going to struggle because you need English and you need maths, and you'll need to do A-level maths and A-level physics, and that's probably not going to work well
so
for you.
was that a case of don't tell me I can't?
It was exactly a case of that, Bill.
Yes,
so I went
but
from
I've been there.
special needs maths, and I scraped through an A-level in maths. I managed to scrape an A in English out of sheer bloody mindedness that I had a English tutor that said, you're going to lose marks on spelling and punctuation. Don't even worry about it. Just let your creative storytelling come through. So that got me into the uni degree that I wanted, which was design engineering, which is actually a double degree. And this was flipping hard. And with the benefit of hindsight, I would have done it.
Too late now.
Too late now. Because it was effectively 2 degrees in the space of one, but it was over 4 years. Yeah. So I had a year in industry. And that was where I went and worked it was meant to be 12 months, but I loved it so much that I went and worked with Parker Pen.
Okay, so we'll hold you there.
Right.
All right, let's go back to the beginning, Sian.
Jan?
All right.
To you.
Yes. Okay. So, we're doing the podcast here today in Belmont, and in fact, I went to school in Belmont as well. So, although I have had quite a journey.
Well, there's a very good school around the road.
Yeah,
isn't there?
There is. I did go to Roslyn Primary School, but I started at Apollo Bay Primary. We had a farm in Apollo Bay when I think we moved there when I was 1 or 2 or something like that. So I started off in primary school in Apollo Bay, and then as my eldest brother got towards high school age, my parents decided to pack up and move to Geelong. We kept the farm, but we moved here to Geelong, and that's when I went to Roslyn Primary School. And then from Roslyn, I then went to Geelong Grammar School for a few years, and so I started in grade 6 there, moved to the Highton campus, which existed back then, and then I would say Geelong Grammar was great for a time for our family, but then there was a time when it didn't suit any of us, and in fact we all found ourselves leaving at different times. So I moved on to Morongo Girls College, only for a year because then the school closed down.
Well, that's happened in Geelong, hasn't it? My brother went to Chanel College,
Yeah.
and they closed it down, and then he finished up at Geelong College. But just on Belmont, we interviewed somebody in the last couple of podcasts who went to junior school, the grammar junior school in down below Marcus Oldham.
Yep, at Highton, yep.
And as I referred to then, I'll repeat myself, my widowed sister was the matron at that place.
There you go.
How's that for? It's
world again.
everything's coming back, right, to haunt me.
Centre of the universe.
That's right.
And I loved that campus. It was lovely and small and friendly. And I probably might not have been the same matron, but the mateys there, as we used to call them, they were lovely.
So while you were at high school, did you have any vision of what you wanted to do? Or were you being pushed into the family farm? Or what?
No, well, I certainly was, unlike perhaps my brothers that are more hands-on, I was more into the humanities and the arts and that sort of thing. And during high school, I thought I'd like to be in journalism or publishing or something like that. So I went to Morongo, it closed down, and ended up at Matthew Flinders. From Matthew Flinders, I went to Melbourne University to study just a Bachelor of the Arts, and it was there that I discovered a passion for theatre administration. So I'd always loved the theatre. Here in Geelong, I was in Jasoda, the Jasoda Juniors. I was, always performing, singing, all of that sort of thing. But I realised that actually, whilst I love that, my talents were better used behind the scenes. And so that's where I really kicked off my career, was in arts administration, starting in the theatres at Melbourne University, moving to Opera Australia, and then over to the UK, which sort of brings us, I guess, a little bit back to where we were.
And during that time, did you have any part-time jobs?
Part-time jobs, I did indeed. So not during my schooling years, but I had a part-time job here at Le Parisien. So when it opened on the waterfront, I was there opening night as a waitress. And
The Temple family.
Yes, and so I worked there for that opening year. That would have been around 2000, I guess. 1999 perhaps, for the whole summer. And I also worked for what was then known as the Geelong Waterfront Festival, and in fact the Celtic Festival. So that was where I'd already realised that I wanted to move into that arts administration world, and so I found myself offered to intern and then ended up getting a job.
So what took you to the UK?
So, my family are British. So I'm the only official Australian in my family. And when I was completing my arts administration postgraduate diploma, there was an opportunity to do work in an organisation, and I thought, why not go to the UK? So I went over to Manchester and worked in an organisation called Dance Initiative Greater Manchester, supporting them they did some incredible work with disabled dancers, and we put on some incredible shows as part of the Commonwealth Games that was happening that year, which...
Oh, there's an interesting topic. The Commonwealth Games, Mark. Yeah, that's right. And I'll just stop you there for a minute, because we'll go back to you, Andrew. What was the first ever part-time job or job you had? Did you have a job at high school, etc.? With your creative brain, I'm really interested to hear. I'm expecting something way out of left field.
Well, maybe. Huh? So I... maybe my creative brain combined with my, might say laziness, but I would describe it as focus on efficiency. I was watching friends go and do paper rounds, and I tried a paper round, and it was cold and wet and miserable in the UK. And you didn't roll them up and throw them. You had to walk up and push them through the letterboxes. So dogs ripping them. It was not pleasant. And then you realise how much money you get, and it was like, this isn't smart. So I started selling things at school. So I would tinker and go to second-hand fairs, buy things, fix it, sell it, and then you go, well, this is really good. Probably, hopefully, it's been long enough now and I'm far enough away from the UK tax office, because obviously at high school I wasn't declaring anything.
All those warranties that you didn't provide.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like many sort of boys in high school age, it was Warcraft and Dungeons and Dragons and all the figurines. And while the games were interesting, it was okay, but I actually really loved the model making and the creating the dioramas, and that was something that my dad had a passion for. He was making tanks and dioramas with all these tanks and planes. So we used to spend a lot of time going to the hobby shop at the weekends, and I started off with model railways and moved into this. And so what I would create is the game boards with full dioramas that would be able to move and be replaced, and I would sell them to my friends. And what they didn't know is I would go around and get all the offcuts from, our equivalent of Bunnings, which was B&Q, and Texas Home Base back in those days. And I'd get the sawdust and, paint it, dye it, all the different greens and make the trees and what have you. And so it cost me very little, and I charged quite handsomely for it. And then I did the same thing going forward, that even in the upper schooling age, that my friends were all going and working in retail or hospitality, and I thought, well, that's long hours and it's a bit rubbish. So I started up my own mowing round and just doing gardening. But it was the actual garden design that I really loved doing. So I got a few garden design gigs out of it as well. And that paid far more than just mowing the lawns.
I did notice as I walked in your front gate, some landscaping and design going on in the front yard. But it's far from complete.
It is far from complete, Bill.
It's a case of plumber's taps, perhaps.
Well, I put it down to you either have the money and you don't have the time, or you have the time and don't have the money. And at the moment, I have neither.
All right. So, Mark, we've got to move on, and we might get into what's happening now.
Well, just before we do, so Parker Pens was your first sort of real job?
First real paid.
And into design?
Yeah. So from that, I then got a job straight into a amazing award-winning design consultancy in Leicester, which was fantastic. It was like a government graduate placement scheme where they wanted to inject knowledge, expertise, technology, because I'd specialised in mechatronics in product design. And so they wanted that. So I worked for them for a few years.
Okay, so where did you meet? In the UK?
We did meet in the UK, so...
This is a good story.
Yeah, so after I had worked in Manchester, I came back to Australia, worked in Opera Australia, and then decided after a couple of years there I wanted to go back to the UK, and I got a job at Scottish Opera. And I was working at Scottish Opera, and Andrew's sister was also working at Scottish Opera. And now my surname back then was Varashensky, and Andrew's sister obviously was a Jones. And one day, as girls do, we were discussing our futures, and she was talking about her boyfriend and what her surname was going to be when they got married. And I said, I was single at the time, and I said, I don't care who I marry as long as there's something like a Clark or a Jones or something like that.
As long as I can pronounce it. That's what you would say.
Exactly. And she said, oh, well, you could marry my brother. And so this then became a bit of a running joke in the office, and she would phone me up on the internal phones and say, hi, sister-in-law. And it was just this bit of a joke, and I never thought it would go anywhere because I knew that we were in Glasgow, and I knew that her brother lived down south somewhere in England. But I'll then hand to you, Andrew, for then how we actually came to meet.
So I and a big group of friends are also passionate about theatre and amateur dramatics, and we formed our own group called the University Players because we all went to different universities from this hometown, but we'd come back in the summer, and in basically the space of 2 weeks we would learn and put on a musical and stage it and everything and raise money for charity. So we'd gathered for this, and the after party was typically always at my mum and dad's house. My dad was a keen home brewer, so there it was, good source of very good beer. And we were having this party, and my mum had known about this running joke from my sister and with Sian for a long time, and she decided now, with hindsight in her wisdom, that there shouldn't be this joke that I didn't know about that was involving me. So she announced at this after-show party to my sister, Libby, why don't you tell Andrew about, his future bride that you've set him up with?
Arranged marriage.
Yeah, something like that.
Scottish arrangement.
Yeah. So we're going back a while, like over 20 years now. So in those days, you would say, well, have you got a photograph? And bizarrely, like smartphones they weren't smart. They were just mobile phones. And so bizarrely, my sister said, well, actually, I do, because it's the bookmark in my book that I read on the train coming down. So she went off and got this photograph. And I said, oh, wow. And my sister said, no, not the blonde one. The brunette. And I said, no, wow, okay. Yeah, well, we should probably just arrange to meet then and have this arranged marriage. And we all joked and laughed, and the evening sort of went on. But I went back to the office, and after the weekend went back to work. And by this time I was working for a large research development consultancy in the Midlands, and we were focusing around developing amazing technologies that still to this day are coming to light. So really, really blue sky stuff. And I got into the office early, and I thought, well, I've been dating for a while and hadn't really found the right one. And, the traditional dating methods, this was still pre-internet as well, dating. So it was like, oh, well, why don't I just send her some flowers? Because I'd heard the story that, Sian would love, a guy to buy her flowers. So I thought, all right, I was going online. And back then, again, online shopping was still early. So you had to buy flowers from the florist closest to where you were going to get it delivered. Yep. Well, Sian works in the opera. So the florist near the opera, they were charging an absolute fortune. So a colleague of mine then rocks in and looks over my shoulder and he says, what are you doing, Jonesy? I told him the story, and he said, what? You're going to spend that much money on flowers for a girl you've never even met? You should just buy her some seeds and tell her to grow her own. We had a good laugh, and I went, that's not actually a bad idea. So I went out and bought seeds I thought were a bit cheap, so I bought her some bulbs. So I bought a sack of bulbs, and I found a card with these beautiful bulb flowers on the front, and I wrote in this card, potentiality should always precede actuality. Therefore, here are your potential flowers. If you need a hand planting them, give me a call, Andrew. And I wrote my number and then sent them up to Sian.
Well, that explains a lot, Mark, doesn't it, right?
Actually, that encapsulates you.
You, that's right. So let's get to you today. And what, Mark, you want to lead this one off?
Yeah, so G2innovation,
yeah,
which you're both involved in.
Yep.
What started that? So you came back to Australia.
Well, that started in the UK.
Okay.
So I left the large consulting firm, persuaded a colleague of mine to come and join me. We basically had an idea and a loose business plan. In the process of going around and telling all of my clients that I was leaving and introducing them to their new account manager, my biggest account sort of said, well, if you're leaving, then I'll be leaving. And I said, oh, well, I can't work with you. I've got golden handcuffs. And he said, well, who said anything about working? How about I just invest in your business? And then you work for me on the side as part of that. It's like, okay, that could work. So that's how it started in the UK. And we grew that. And then we were obviously, by this time, we were now together, and we were married, actually. Yeah.
We were married. We had a baby on the way first.
Yep.
When you started G2, and then soon after we had two small children. And at the same time, you were realising that he was working in innovation consultancy, but realising the connection between culture in an organisation and actually achieving innovation. And I, in my opera role, I worked a lot with artists in creating an environment where they could thrive. And so I was also seeing this connection between how a culture, the culture of the organisation and the output of the work. And so when we decided to move back to Australia, we went, well, why don't we actually do it together? And it makes sense. Our kids were really small at that point, so the idea of both of us being in 9-to-5 jobs wasn't really going to cut it. So that's how we started G2innovation Australia, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Just the culture. It's an interesting word. It's bandied around, and everyone writes, you've got to have a good culture. Culture. What's the famous saying? Culture eats
strategy for breakfast.
You hear all of this stuff. So, in my experience working with many businesses and family businesses, it is true that if the culture's not right, well, it's sort of a recipe for disaster in the long term.
Yeah.
But what's your take on culture?
Well, you say culture's that word that's bandied around. So's innovation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, but no one understands it. So.
No one understands either of them. That's the thing. And then you combine it as well with the other aspect of what we do, which is leadership. So you've got the three words that are massively overused in business, misunderstood, and just bandied around. So culture is the output. Yeah. Same as innovation is the output of the actions, the behaviours, the mindsets, the attitudes that happen. And so fixing it is not a case of, it's a framework or a change program. It's actually really understanding human and unlocking human. And what we've learned over the years is leadership, culture and innovation all actually require the same or similar mindsets, attitudes, skills, approaches, like curiosity, creativity, experimentation. And you've got a healthy culture when people are asking questions. You've got a healthy culture when people are experimenting because it's safe to do so, safe to explore, safe to fail. And as a result of doing those sorts of things, you've got great opportunity for driving innovation. And leadership needs to be able to unlock that. So move from control to enablement.
And Sian, what's your take on it?
Well, obviously very, very similar to Andrew, but I would say that your system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. Like I'm quoting here. It's not my own words. And so if you have a culture that is very authoritarian, very command and control, then you can still get great results, but there will be a limit to the amount of initiative people are taking, the amount of autonomy, the amount of creativity. But that might absolutely suit your organisation and that culture works for you. Then you might have a culture that I would term a family culture, where it's not necessarily a family business, but a culture where everyone's very friendly. It's nice. Lovely and warm and nice. And people would say in that organisation, oh yes, we have great psychological safety in our organisation. But often what is lacking then is a collective ownership, collective accountability. And so again, you get people friendly, happy to come to work, feeling really safe in their environment, but perhaps you're not getting the level of performance that you'd like to see.
You also won't see innovation come out of that, because innovation requires creative tension. It requires constructive conflict. And in nice cultures, we avoid conflicts.
But then that's a case of feeling safe to be able to do that from employees. I have a favourite saying, and Mark has experienced this firsthand, is I ask in the right environment, I ask employees, tell me what you think about when you drive to work in the morning. Mm. The smarties say, well, I ride a bike. But the reason I ask that is because every now and again you'll get a response that's totally negative. Mm. And it's like an antenna's gone up. And you say there's something wrong here.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
We'll tell you a story off air about that. But it's a really important one. To me, that's a gauge. When I am called into a family business, I walk around with the antennas up. Yeah. Well, first of all, I go to the car park, see who's driving the latest Merc and got their car parked outside the office, right? That's an antenna, right?
Yeah.
But then you go and ask questions like that. Yeah, and that's my tester.
Yeah.
And that comes back to what we're talking about.
It's a great one. Yeah. Well, to take that one a little bit further, when I ask teams where do they have their best ideas, rarely is it at work. Yeah. Yeah, it's on the drive into work, it's in the shower, it's when I'm walking the dog, it's when I'm walking on the beach. And again, that's the similar thing. It's interesting because you need that freedom to think, you need the space to think. Well, do we just trust and rely on the fact that our teams are going to do that in their own time and then bring it into work? It's interesting. It's a bold bet if you're relying on that.
So and if you're in that culture where it's command and control, authoritarian, almost like a production line, you're never going to have that space because you're always busy doing.
So just very quickly, you came back to Australia. Is that when you started off with the big desk at the Chamber of Commerce with the was it bright yellow?
It was bright yellow.
There you go.
And we grew that because we moved from the Chamber into Federal Mills. And
we moved very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Well, we grew very quickly. So
that's cool. I was just putting that in perspective. That's how I first met Andrew.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for people wanting to connect with G2, what's the best way to find you?
So you can connect with us probably on LinkedIn is a great way. That's where we do most of our marketing, and also on our website, G2innovation.com.au.
And when people come to you, what's the first question you ask them? Gian, what's the first question you ask them?
We just ask them about what issues they're facing, what are the challenges that they're seeing in their organisation, and our focus really is on understanding those problems.
And Andrew, what are you looking for?
I'll add on to that one and what are the aspirations? What are the goals? What are we actually working towards? What's the vision?
Andrew, one of my favourite Stephen Covey sayings, right? First, understand.
Yeah.
Seek to understand.
Totally.
Yeah. But anyway.
So you've got another business that you've created. So what's that about?
Well, actually, Bill, when you were talking about the drive to work, it made me think about this other business, because there was a time when Andrew and I were working out in North Geelong at Federal Mills, and we scaled the business, as you said, Mark, really rapidly, and the children were still relatively young then, and there was a lot of pressure, and I was really feeling it. And I remember that feeling of being in the car driving with Andrew and thinking, how can I get out of this? Stop, drop and roll kind of thing. And it was at that point that we had a conversation and went, something needs to change here. And, because there was a risk that the way I was feeling, the way Andrew was feeling, not only would it impact the business, that it might impact on our relationship and our family. And so we sought coaching individually. We had coaching, which was transformational. And I think as a result of that, we scaled much more effectively. We've branched into different areas, such as leadership, like we were talking about. And now we found ourselves working far more together up front, facilitating. There was a time when I was more behind the scenes, and I'm now far more up front, consulting, working with clients in the same way that Andrew would. And a lot of clients that work with both of us are really intrigued by the fact that we work so well together, and we have a happy marriage, we have a happy family, and we manage other projects like house renovations and things without everything falling apart. So we thought maybe there's an opportunity here to support other people working with people that they love. So whether that's their spouse, whether that's their friend, whether that's a family member, and helping them not so much with the business aspect of it, but more from that developmental aspect. How do we manage our egos? How do we manage competitiveness in the relationship? How do we understand how we work with each other's strengths, but also allow space for us to grow into other areas as well, and have conversations about boundaries, about burnout, all of those things that sometimes when you're working with someone you love and you don't want to actually burden them with your own concerns because you love them and don't want more burdens on their shoulder. But so having that space to talk to somebody.
And the business is called?
The business is called The Co-Founder Couple.
And found on?
Found on the cofoundercouple.com.
Excellent. Cool.
Yeah.
Final question for each of you. 5 years' time, Andrew, what's your vision? Where will you be?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I have for a very long time said I cannot see myself doing anything else other than what we're doing. And then Sian is always that little voice in my ear that says, well, what about this? And then I start going, well, that's interesting. Let's explore that. So 5 years' time, I think we would very much like G2innovation to be scaling again and combine simultaneously with the co-founder couple. We're doing this modern thing called portfolio careers now. Oh, right. It's all the trend. It's all the trend. You get to your mid-40s and you need to start thinking in portfolio. So there's a few other little things that we're exploring as well.
Just on that, Andrew, something I put on LinkedIn, I spoke about my life of sliding doors.
Ah, yes.
Right, isn't that what we're talking about?
That's exactly what we're talking about.
Sliding door mode. Yeah. And Jan, 5 years?
5 years from now, similar to Andrew, but I would like to see both Andrew and I doing more in the space of keynote speaking. We both love keynote speaking. We're both very good at keynote speaking, but we'd love to have more of a platform in that space as in addition to the work, so as part of our portfolio, I guess.
How old are your children?
Children are 13 and 15 now.
So Saturdays, I imagine, are taken up with lots of other issues.
My goodness,
around.
Yes.
Right.
You've just
Mum and
opened
Dad's
another
taxi.
can of worms there. Yeah. Parental Ubering is what I call it.
Sian, Andrew, thank you.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed that conversation and we could have kept going. But good luck. Wish you well. And folks, if you really do want someone to help you with innovation, strategic thinking, leadership, relationships, reach out to Andrew and Sian, and thank you.
Yep, thank you both. Great conversation.
Thank you very much, and happy birthday as well.
Oh, thank you.
Happy birthday. Thank you for coming out on a day of celebration.
Oh, well, it's just another day.
I'm glad we got the biscuits now.
That's right.
Thank you.